Detroit Blues, Because of You Motherfuckers, from the pen of Helen Zia, presents us with complex interplay of racial tensions, economic downturns, and the fight for justice, especially involving the Asian American community in ways that were not ubiquitous at the times. What happened on June 19, 1982? Zia's story highlights the facts about the murder of Vincent Chin, a Chinese American who was beaten to death in Detroit on that warm June day by two white men, Ronald Evans and Michael Nitz. Helen Zia's Detroit Blues, Because of You Motherfuckers, published as a chapter in American Studies, now centers on the tragic murder of Vincent Chin and the subsequent mobilization of the Asian American community. Her main argument revolves around the racial scapegoating that led to Chin's death and the failure of the legal system to deliver justice, which she argues reflects broader systemic issues of racism and the marginalization of Asian Americans within American society. Page 36. The incident took place just before his wedding in Highland Park during his bachelor party at a raunchy striptease bar he frequented called Fancy Pants. As bad luck would have it, after he told his ma it would be his last time there. Anyway, since he was trying to not tie the knot, but she became superstitious of his statement. Sadly, Vincent Chin's final experience was targeted by hate and will forever be a testimony of the tragic way in which a racial scapegoating were the grounds for Chin's murder, where he was wrongfully blamed for the decline in the American auto industry simply because of his Asian appearance, despite him being an American born Chinese citizen. Detroit Blues, Because of You Motherfuckers, from the pen of Helen Zia, presents us with the complex interplay of racial tension, economic downturns, and the fight for justice, especially involving the Asian American community in ways that were not ubiquitous at the times. What happened on June 19, 1982? Zia's story highlights the facts about the murder of Vincent Chin, a Chinese American man who was beaten to death in Detroit on that warm June day by two white men, Ronald Evans and Michael Nitz. Helen Zia's Detroit Blues, Because of You Motherfuckers, published as a chapter in Asian American Studies, now centers on the tragic murder of Vincent Chin and the subsequent mobilization of the Asian American community. Her main argument revolves around that racial scapegoating had led to Chin's death and the failure of the legal system to deliver justice, which she argues reflects broader systemic issues of racism and the marginalization of Asian Americans within American society. Page 36. The incident took place just before his wedding in Highland Park during his bachelor party at a raunchy striptease bar he frequented called Fancy Pants. As bad luck would have it, after he told his ma it would be his last time there. Anyway, since he was tying the knot, but she became superstitious of his statement. Sadly, Vincent Chin's final experience was targeted by hate and will forever be a testimony of the tragic way in which racial scapegoating were the grounds for Chin's murder, where he was wrongfully blamed for the decline of the American auto industry simply because of his Asian appearance, despite him being an American born citizen of Chinese descent in Detroit during a time of intense anti Japanese sentiment, and in which she argues that this was not an isolated incident but a manifestation of deep seated racial biases and structural inequalities. Page 36. Zia discusses civil rights in the context of the Asian American struggle for equality and recognition. The Vincent Chin case is presented as a watershed moment that expanded the civil rights movement to include the concerns of Asian Americans who had previously been marginalized in this discourse. Page 41. Zia further argues that this case became a facilitator for political awakening and solidarity among Asian Americans who have historically been viewed as politically passive people, or, from a more ethnocentric lens, seen as the model minority. Furthermore, the Vincent Chin incident motivated the Oriental community to form the American Citizens for Justice, ACJ, a pan Asian civil rights organization fittingly marking a significant shift in Asian American activism. Page 40 to 42. Zia further argues that this case became a facilitator Another critical aspect Zia would articulate is that such disproportionate accounting for injustice necessitates immediate exposure of and for flaws in the American legal system, particularly its inability to adequately and sufficiently address and swiftly punish genuine hate crimes against Asian American community. The entirely lenient sentences given to Vincent Chin's killers, despite the very clear racial motivations, accentuated the legal vulnerability, obviously, of course, as well as featured a societal invisibility of Asian Americans, and they accelerated our need for the systemic change which was realistically authentic to minorities. Page 44. The theory racialized economic scapegoating as a catalyst for minority civil rights movements. The Vincent Chin case not only emphasizes individualized acts of racial violence, but also illustrated a deeper, widespread, and permeating trend racialized economic scapegoating. A perpetual ubiquity of energized hate and distrust towards maintaining Eurocentric attitudes. But unfortunately, this is where certain minority groups are unfairly blamed for broader economic problems, albeit a powerful catalyst for civil rights movements when marginalized communities, in response to violence and injustice, mobilize to demand systemic change. Although it was always in response to poisoned ideology. Yet still, another principal argument with what Zia had presented is, in all actuality, a failure of the American legal system to recognize and address the situation for what it was, as a hate crime. Therefore, in effect, reflecting the institutional neglect and erasure of Asian Americans in the broader civil rights discourse. Page 44. The minor, almost non existent sentencing of Chin's killers and the initial disregard for the racial motivations behind the attack demonstrated a significant benefit for whites while broadening gaps with regards to legal protection for Asian Americans. Zia positions this case as a pivotal moment which brought opportune growth to the civil rights movement as a coalition for the Asian American community, leading to much greater political activism and the formation of the American Citizens for Justice, ACJ, which worked tirelessly to seek justice for Vincent Chin, bring closure to his family, and address broader issues of racial injustice everywhere. Page 42. This theory goes beyond the Vincent Chin case, suggesting that economic scapegoating, particularly during times of economic downturn, often result in violence against minority groups. However, and more importantly, subsequent failure of the justice system to address these crimes serves as a key moment of collective identity formation and mobilization among the targeted communities. Racialized scapegoating leads to violence. The frustrations and economic anxieties of the dominant population are often vented through acts of violence against marginalized groups, as seen when Ronald Evans and Michael Nitz physically attacked Vincent Chin due to their misplaced anger over job losses. This aligns with historical patterns where racial violence escalates during periods of economic strain. Legal injustices as a spark for activism. When the justice system fails to adequately respond to this violence, it reveals institutional biases that further marginalize the targeted communities. In the Chin case, the lenient sentencing of Chin's killers ignited outrage and led to Pan-Asian movement. The legal system's failure serves as a tipping point, leading minority groups to unite and form new coalitions, as seen with the ACJ. Formation of a collective identity and political mobilization. The scapegoated community, in response to both the violence and the legal system's failures, often begins to see itself as a cohesive group fighting for collective civil rights. This political mobilization often extends beyond the original incident to address broader systemic issues and broader systemic inequalities, as the Vincent Chin case galvanized Asian Americans to challenge both racial violence and broader social exclusion. Legacy of change and symbolism for future movements. Yeah, these movements not only seek immediate justice, but often tend to lead to longer term changes in civil rights legislation and public perception. The Vincent Chin case, for example, led to greater awareness of hate crimes against Asian Americans. The passage of the Hate Crime Statistic Act in 1990, and the incorporation of Asian Americans into the broader civil rights narrative. This theory of racialized economic scapegoating can be seen in other historical contexts as well. Japanese internment during World War II, they were scapegoated as economic threats during wartime, leading to their internment in camps. Post 9/11, Islamophobia. Muslims and those perceived to be Muslim were scapegoated as threats to national security, leading to increased hate crimes and target of Arab and South Asian communities. Immigration and Latinos. During economic recessions and periods of high unemployment, Latino immigrants are often scapegoated as taking away jobs, leading to increased violence and discriminatory legislation aimed at immigrant communities. The Vincent Chin case represents a powerful example of how racialized economic scapegoating can catalyze broader civil rights movements. When economic anxieties are projected onto minority communities and the legal system fails to deliver justice, these groups often respond to collective action. This theory highlights the critical role that such events play in the formation of political identity and the fight for systemic change, suggesting that economic downturns combined with legal injustice serve as a potent formula for the birth of civil rights movements. The Vincent Chin case remains a pivotal moment in Asian American history and a reminder of while progress has been made, there is still much work to do, and serves as a call to action for all of us to remain vigilant in the fight against racial injustice and to remember that like the Asian American community did in 1982, we have the power to create change when we stand together. Zia meticulously chronicles the events leading up to and following Vincent Chin's murder, starting with the night of the attack and culminating in the multiple legal battles that ensued. This timeline emphasizes the prolonged and arduous struggles for justice that Chin's family and the Asian American community face. It also underscores the community's frustration with the legal system that initially treated Chin's murder as a minor incident, despite its clear racial overtones. Community mobilization and the birth of the ACJ. Zia highlights how the Asian American community, historically fragmented by ethnic lines, came together in unprecedented solidarity. The formation of the ACJ, the first Pan Asian civil rights organization, is portrayed as a significant milestone in Asian American activism. This collective effort showcased the community's ability to mobilize and advocate for its rights, thereby challenging the perception of Asian Americans as a model minority, that is, politically passive. Page 40 to 42. It also had impact on legislation. Zia details how the Vincent Chin case brought national attention to the issues of hate crimes against Asian Americans, leading to changes in the legal landscape. Although immediate legal outcomes were disheartening, the case eventually contributed to the passage of the Hate Crime Statistic Act of 1990 and later to the incorporation of hate crime provisions in the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1994. Page 53. This shows the case's long-term impact on raising awareness and prompting legal reforms. And also, support from the media's role in shaping public perception. The chapter also examines how media coverage played a dual role. Initially, the local media downplayed the racial aspects of the crime, but as national outlets picked up the story, the narrative shifted to highlight the racial injustice, thereby pressuring the legal system to re-examine the case. Zia argues that the media attention was crucial in framing the case as a civil rights issue rather than just a local criminal matter. Key terms: model minority myth, the stereotype that portrays Asian Americans universality, successful and problem-free, often used to dismiss their experiences of racism and discrimination. Yellow Peril, a racist ideology depicting Asian Americans as a threat to Western civilization, often invoked during times of economic or social unrest. Page 37. Pan-Asian Movement, a political and social movement uniting Asian Americans of diverse ethnicities to advocate for common interests and combat shared injustices. Page 43. Grassroots activism, community-led organization and advocacy efforts, often in response to systemic injustices. Economic context and scapegoating. The economic downturn of the 1980s, particularly in the auto industry, led to the scapegoating of Japanese Americans and fostered a climate of hostility towards all Asian Americans. Page 36 to 37. Zia's arguments resonate with the themes we've been exploring throughout the course, such as the intersectionality, Williams Crenshaw, 1989, of race, class, and gender identity. The case, for the most part, ties into examination of system inequalities within the legal system, and as discussed in course content, which explores how marginalized groups often face additional barriers in seeking justice due to institutional biases. Zia's work amplifies the importance of intersectional activism and the need for solidarity across different racial and ethnic groups to effectively combat systemic racism. Given the ongoing issues of racial violence and hate crimes against Asian Americans, why does one think that Vincent Chin's case has not led to more lasting systemic changes in the legal system and broader societal attitudes toward Asian Americans? When your legal system often falls short in addressing hate crimes adequately due to factors like reluctance to report, prosecutorial discretion, and difficulty of proving bias motivation in court, well, just imagine how cultural stereotypes and media portrayals compound these challenges significantly more by framing Asian Americans for being either the model minority or labeled perpetual foreigner, who has to break the stigma that limits public empathy and reduces the urgency of universal reform. The disconnect indicates deeper societal shifts that are essential to achieving real changes, shifts that go beyond punitive measures and address pervasive biases in cultural level. Asking the question, which probes into the limits of the legal reforms and cultural perceptions of Asian Americans, is crucial because despite the visibility of the Chinque, similar incidents of violence continue to occur. Individuals continue to face similar struggles, as seen in the attacks of elderly Asian Americans and vandalism of Asian-owned businesses. Victims frequently encounter challenges in